All right. Thank you so much for joining us today, friends. For those of you who can't be with us live, we are going to record this so that you can learn all the things that Ashley is going to share with us today. But I am super excited and so very honored to introduce Ashley Smith to you. She is also known as the Donut Eating Dietitian. And if you are anything like me, when you hear that, you were like, for real? Like, there is such a thing? I'll just be very honest with you in the beginning of this and share with you that in my journey, through a lot of mess and trying to figure out what God wants me to do with my fitness journey, I feel like, weaved my path with Ashley's, and I first heard her speak on a podcast on body freedom, and I connected with her. What she said totally resonated with me, and when she started talking about finding her identity in Christ, I just was like, thank you, Lord, for bringing this sweet sister into my life that I can learn from, and I have learned so much. If you're not following her on social media, I would encourage you to do so. I'm super excited for what she's going to share with us today, and I want to share with you a quote. We talked on the phone yesterday, and something that she said that just touched my heart, and I know it will touch yours too because we all share a similar heartbeat. She said that God is using my story for His glory and to help set people free. I loved when you said that. And that God has turned my brokenness into a way to help others, and God has redeemed me. And I'm super excited that you're here. I'm honored that you've set aside this time to talk with us. So I am going to just cover myself up. If you want to just tell us a little bit about yourself, Ashley, and how you came to this place where you are in your journey, that would be fantastic.
Yeah. Thank you so much for those kind words. I was talking to people at work today just about how encouraged I am by the fact that you were encouraged, and I'm just grateful for the Lord, how the Lord is using my story. But thank you so much for having me. Like she said, my name's Ashley Smith. I'm a registered dietitian in Tulsa, Oklahoma. I have a food blog called the Donut Eating Dietitian, which I started about a year ago, a little over a year ago, and I'm still trying to get that going. But I live in Tulsa with my husband. We are not really newlyweds, but we're trying to figure out life, newly graduates, and just kind of figuring out what married life looks like, what working life looks like, and enjoying it. It's a learning curve, but it's also really good. So how I came to become a dietitian. Growing up, I grew up in a really wonderful Christian home. I'm really, really grateful for my parents. God was not just a part of life, but He was really the reason why we did the things that we did. Life was about God and His gospel, and I'm really grateful for that solid foundation. My dad was very much the spiritual leader in our home. We would have Sunday night Bible studies, and my mom would pray with me in the evenings. And I remember in third grade, my dad encouraging me to have a quiet time, and I'm like, I'm in third grade. I'm not going to every day have a quiet time. That's like way above my head. But I'm really, really grateful for the solid foundation that my parents gave me. I attended a Christian school in high school, middle school and high school, and am grateful for that experience. But I also had a really hard time. I had a small class and was made fun of a lot, and never really felt like I belonged. I didn't feel like I had a friend group that where I just fit in. I just kind of felt like an outsider, and I can see now how that has those lies have really impacted the decisions that I've made, and just how I've lived my life. But my journey with nutrition and food started, really my whole life with my personality. I was very much perfectionistic as a child, a little bit OCD, and so there are some of those tendencies. I wanted to follow the rules perfectly. I didn't care much about nutrition. It wasn't on my mind at all. We ate kind of whatever at my house. We had vegetables and that sort of thing, but nutrition, health, whatever wasn't really on the radar until my freshman year of high school. And my parents decided to go on the South Beach diet. And I was devastated at the time because I was like, we're not going to be able to eat real food. And I mean, I flipped out about it. But that gave me some unrealistic or untrue ideas about food and carbohydrates. So that was kind of the thing that got things started. The same year, I grew 5 inches, which is a lot. And so there were a lot of body changes that I was having to deal with, trying to figure out just everything that goes along with that. My sister went away at college, and she was very much into nutrition and health. And although I wasn't, I remember jokingly telling her, like, when you come back, I'm going to be healthy, ha, ha, ha. But I actually started to pay attention to the things that I was eating. And it wasn't anything major. I was just cutting back on some of my portions, trying to eat what I thought was more healthfully. I started to cut out more carbohydrates because of the diet that my parents were on. But it really wasn't anything major. I remember my sophomore year, I had several girlfriends who would eat together at lunch, and we were always comparing the things that we were eating. And that was really, really detrimental to me, because I always felt like I needed to eat less because my friend was eating less. And so there was just this silent competition that was going on that really fueled the fire for me to continue to restrict. And as I continued to restrict, I felt empowered by the fact that I could say no to things, but other people couldn't. I felt good about the fact that I was starting to lose weight. But at the same time, although I was restricting and I wasn't eating these things, I was thinking about them more and more and really obsessing about those foods. The summer after my sophomore year, things really started. I really was diving into eating healthfully, and what healthy to me meant was basically low calorie. And so I was always looking for recipes that were low calorie, looking at food all of the time, writing down recipes, thinking about what I was going to eat next, measuring it out, thinking about my fitness and all of that. And I remember after my sophomore year, I went into the doctor for a physical, and we just had to get a physical before we played volleyball. And I had dropped, I don't even remember, but some weight, and I was ecstatic. And that is what really fueled the fire. I just felt so empowered, so excited about the fact that I had lost weight, and didn't even feel like I had tried that much. But food just really, really took over. And not even food, but the fear of food really took over. I loved it. I was obsessed with it, but I hated it at the same time, and was just so fearful about what it could do to my body. And I remember going to a church retreat, and we were doing worship, and I couldn't think about anything but food. And I just realized, this is a problem. Like, I can't think about anything else, and this is not the way that it's supposed to be. And afterwards, we were all eating snacks, and my friend was eating a bagel pizza, and I was eating my carrot sticks that I had brought. And I just longed to be able to eat like all of my friends without worrying about my weight. So when I went home, I met with a personal trainer, and we talked about how I could increase my intake. And for me, I wanted to increase my intake without gaining weight. And in reality, I desperately needed to gain weight. But in my head, I just wanted to be able to eat the same and stay the same size. And that went on for a few weeks. I didn't increase my intake. The fear was just was too much. It was paralyzing. I was weighing myself daily. I was counting all of my calories. I was exercising. I remember sometimes thinking, I think I burned more at the gym than I ate today. And really started to have the physical complications of it. I hadn't had a period in a really long time. I was cold. It hurt to sit down. There were just a lot of physical complications that were going on. But in my mind, I took a lot of pride in those things. And those physical symptoms to me meant that I was special. And I realized that I talked to my mom, and we realized that I needed to get help. And so I went to a counselor slash dietitian and was diagnosed with anorexia. And it was a terrifying moment for me just because I knew that I had done a lot of damage to my body, and I was fearful about my heart giving out or going to sleep and not waking up. And so I was fearful about that. But then I was also very fearful about having to gain weight. I was fearful about them taking my identity away. And that's really how I saw it. I felt like everyone that wanted me to gain weight wanted to take away what was special about me. And so it was a long journey. I met with my therapist weekly, and I had stipulations about how much I had to weigh in order to go on a trip and in order to play volleyball. And so I met those rules, but my heart hadn't changed and still was very much wrapped up in calories and my weight. And it was a really, really dark time. I wasn't able to spend time with friends because I didn't have the mental capacity to do it. I wasn't able to go out because I was afraid about the food that would be around. And so I suffered relationally a lot. And then I also suffered a lot in terms of my relationship with Christ, because my body was on the throne of my heart. Food was on the throne of my heart rather than him. And it was my senior year that I started meeting with a lady in my church, and we went through a Bible study that I'm actually going through again, and was just learning about identity and how that impacts really a lot of the decisions that we make. I learned about how the lies that we believe impact our actions. And I just remember the quote so well, a lie believed as truth will affect you as though it were true, even though it's a lie. And that characterized my life. I was living my life based off of a lie, but all of my emotions and things reflected it as though it were true, even though it weren't. So that was really instrumental. And then I went on a traveling sports camp, and I didn't have control over the food that I was eating, which was huge, but just felt really loved and accepted by the people that were on my team. And that is, I think, what was just so huge in my healing, in terms of I didn't feel the need to prove my worth or my value or to earn my love just because they loved me as I was. Even though I was weird and goofy, that acceptance just was really helpful in my healing. So I got to go to college, which was something we weren't sure I was going to be able to do, and maintained a weight. I was no longer underweight. I was having a period with the help of medications and things like that. But food was still something that just consumed my thoughts. I gained weight my freshman year, which is a healthy thing for me at the time. But it was something that was really, really, it caused a lot of distraught for me, especially because I put so much of my self-worth in the way that I looked. And so in college, I did a lot of under-eating, over-exercising, which then led to overeating, and just felt a lot of guilt and shame over the fact that I couldn't get this food thing under control, the fact that I was always thinking about food and I always needed a snack in the evening. And I just remember praying all of the time, sometimes in tears, sometimes journaling, just like, Lord, take this away from me. Like, I hate that food is on the throne of my heart and that you're not. And just felt a lot of spiritual guilt in terms of, I just felt like I didn't love God enough, or that I wasn't disciplined enough, or whatever. But it was just really, really hard. And in college, people praised me all of the time for taking my own food to events or saying no to desserts and things like that. They praised me for these behaviors that really kept me in bondage. And I wanted people to know, like, no, you don't want this life. I take pride in it, but you don't want this. Like, I just want to be free. I don't want to have to be fearful about food or situations, or stressed out about the fact that I didn't get to run so many miles. And so food and exercise just really dominated my life. And it wasn't until really the end of last year I was thinking about going on the Whole30, because I felt like I just couldn't get my eating under control. And I read a blog on why not to go on a diet in the new year, and it really sparked something in me. I started reading books on intuitive eating and mindfulness, and that has just drastically changed my life, my perspective on food. I realized that the fact that I was thinking about food all the time just stemmed from the fact that I was restricting. Overeating is a common response to restriction or deprivation. And so being able to understand a lot of the science behind why food was always on my mind, why I was overeating, was really, really helpful and really freeing. And so the intuitive eating process is something that I incorporate in my own practice because it's been so instrumental for me. And I love it because I feel like I can finally live life. I am not thinking about food all of the time. I'm able to eat foods that I enjoy and that are satisfying to me, but I don't end up overeating them because I know that I can have them at any time. I feel free to go to social functions without worrying about the food. I don't have to bring my own food anymore. I don't know. It just has really freed me up to live life, and I'm so grateful that something that just kept me in bondage for so long, God has finally set me free. And so I'm just really grateful for that. So that's a little bit of my story. I got to dietetics because, as most people that are obsessed with food, they start to pursue a degree in it. And so that's really what brought me to nutrition. Was I was always thinking about food. I wanted to learn more about the body and that sort of thing. But I'm so glad that I chose this profession. I know that the Lord definitely led me to it because He's given me this passion. He's given me this story and has given me the gifts to be able to do it. So yeah, that's my story.
I love that. And I love when you said that food and your body was on the throne of your heart, and that you knew that Christ belonged there. And I think for a lot of us who are on a fitness journey, like that can happen. And so your top tips for how, if that, you've honestly, I think if what I heard you say was correct, is just when you completely restricted and deprived, that's just what you began to obsess about, right? So instead of restricting and depriving, just eating it in moderation, in balance.
Yeah, I think really the major premise of intuitive eating is that we can't really control our weight. We're told a lot that we have a huge impact over how much we weigh. And we play a little role in that, but a lot of it is the way that our body was designed. We are all made to be different shapes and sizes, and that doesn't mean that any of them are wrong. They're just different. I give the example, me and my sister we're obviously family. We have very similar DNA. We look a lot alike, similar heights, but we are very different weights. And for me to be her size would be unhealthy, and for her to be my size would be unhealthy. But there's nothing wrong with the fact that our bodies are different. And so for me to expect her to look like me or for me to look like her just isn't fair. But we really can't control a lot about our weight. So giving up that control of trying to make our bodies look a certain way has been the biggest thing for me, because I'm not trying to control my body through food or exercise. I'm able to choose nourishing things that make me feel good rather than things that are low calorie or something like that. But I think really the first layer, the foundation is being able to accept the way that my body has been made, and I'm going to honor and respect that rather than I'm going to try to change that. Does that make sense?
Totally.
And there's a lot of science behind it. There's a lot. Like I said, our society says if you exercise more and you eat less, you'll lose weight. But our bodies actually enact biological processes that slow down our metabolism and increase our hunger. or they increase our metabolism and decrease our hunger to bring us back to the weight that it wants us to be. And so we really don't have to control it. Our bodies are going to do what they do best, and they're going to control our weight, because God made our bodies really, really smart. So yeah, that's kind of the base, like that's the foundation, and then we build on that.
I appreciate you saying that, and it just strikes a chord so much with me, because our whole purpose in creating this community is because so many women feel like they're failures because they're not controlling enough, they're not disciplined enough, and social media makes it so easy for us to compare our bodies to other people, and we feel like we're supposed to look like them. And so I really appreciate you just pointing that out, that, you know, our bodies aren't meant to be controlled. God has designed them, and they're smart, and they know what we need. So on that note, okay, so we've been talking about self-care in our community, and with the holidays coming up, we just got through Thanksgiving, and I think our girls did a really great job of going into that knowing, okay, you know, I'm going to move my body in a way that feels good to it. I'm not going to move as a way to burn off calories or to give myself permission to eat pumpkin pie. I'm just going to move because my body feels good. But now, okay, we've gotten through Thanksgiving, but Christmas is on the horizon. And so I would love for you to share just some of your top tips for how we can have a healthy holiday so that we can, you know, have some treats and, you know, make it part of our lives without it consuming us.
Right. I love that you said that you didn't exercise to compensate for food. And I tell people you don't have to earn food. Food is a basic need, and so we feed our bodies. It's not something that we have to earn. We don't pay penance for foods that we've eaten, because there are no bad or good foods. Food is food. Some is more nutritious than others. Some foods are going to make me feel better than others, but there are no good or bad foods. I am not good or bad based off of the food that I eat. And so when we remove all of that guilt and shame, then we don't end up going to the cupboard and binging because we don't have all that guilt and shame. So I'm glad that you guys weren't thinking about or weren't focusing on burning calories, because that's really, really common. And I also want to say that you were saying a lot of women don't feel like they're in control. And I don't think food is something that we have to control. And there's just a lot that goes into that. But a lot of women do. A lot of people just feel like, man, I'm such a failure. I try to restrict, I try to stay away from these foods, but when we make something off limits, then we want it. And so that's why I follow an all foods fit. When I can have anything, I don't have to overeat on it. And so there's, all food is allowed. In terms of eating during the holidays, I wrote an article for my newspaper, and it was eating during the holidays. I think the biggest thing is going into events not having a mentality of restriction, because that mentality of restriction is going to cause you to overeat. If we are thinking about how we're going to go on a diet tomorrow, well, then we are going to have the Last Supper feast. You know, we are going to eat as much as possible because we aren't going to be able to have it tomorrow. So making sure that we don't have an attitude of restriction, either dieting before or after, is going to cause us to overeat. Just that perception of restriction is going to cause overeating. I think it's important to, the day of an event, making sure that you feed your body well. Not going to a party overly hungry is really important. I think being very mindful and present when we're at events. So looking at the options, the food options, and choosing what really looks good, not what is safe, not what is low calorie, but what you really, really want. Because when we eat the foods that we want, we're satisfied and we can eat less. I tell people, if you're at a restaurant and you really, really want a burger, but you decide to get the salad because you think it's healthier, you're going to end up eating the entire salad and possibly go and get ice cream afterwards. Whereas if you got the burger, you might have only eaten half of it or 3/4 of it and been satisfied. So at holiday functions, choosing foods that look good, and being present when you're eating it. we are so distracted. We eat with the TV on and while we're doing work, and we just don't pay attention to the foods that we eat. And so at those functions, and really all the time, but specifically then, really noticing the taste and the flavor and the texture. And if you don't like the way something tastes, then don't finish eating it and go back for the foods that do satisfy you and do taste good. So that would be my advice for those functions. Also, if you struggle a lot with overeating, focusing on the people that are there rather than the food. Food definitely enhances life experiences. I think that food is a good gift that God has given us, and we can eat it to the glory of Him, but it's not the purpose of life. The purpose of getting together at those functions is spending time with family. And we have to eat because we have those needs, and it's fun to eat different foods and that sort of thing, but really focusing on what's going on in your life. How are you doing? Really being intentional about getting to know what's going on in your family members, really building those relationships, I think is important. And then, these are just a few days out of the entire year. And so there are days that we eat more and there are days that we eat less. And thankfully our body is really good at looking at things from a whole instead of, minute to minute, day by day. So, it does this, but we stay kind of even keeled. So there are days that we're higher and days that we're lower. So not getting bogged down by the fact that, man, I really overate last night. Well, I may not be as hungry today, and so it evens out. Or I may overeat over these next few days, but if I listen to my body the days afterwards, it's going to take care of me, and I'm going to naturally eat less, or I'm going to move more. In terms of if I'm lacking in nutrients, it's not a big deal because my body looks at it at a more of a whole perspective rather than just one day, one bite, that sort of thing. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, and I think it was a podcast that I heard you speak on where it said your body doesn't know when it's Friday and Saturday, and your body doesn't know when it's Christmas. Like sometimes we will restrict all week long so that we can, kind of go crazy on the weekend. Well, you really kind of go crazy on the weekend because you've restricted all week. And so going into the holidays, if we restrict so we can go crazy on Christmas, well, yeah, because your body, like you said, it's smart. And so if we just eat in moderation leading up to the holidays and listen to our body, like I love that you said, it cares for itself. Like our bodies, this is all about self-care. And so just listening to our bodies. But, when I heard that on the podcast, I was like, yeah, you're right. It's not like your body's like, okay, I know it's Saturday. So, I mean.
Yeah. I tell people all the time, your body doesn't punch a time clock. Because I know people will say, well, it's not time to eat. Well, your body doesn't care. If it's hungry, you need to feed it. Our body doesn't punch a time clock. So you feed it when it's hungry and you stop when you're full. And not that that's a rule or anything like that, but always honoring that hunger is important. And like you said, when we do restrict, we are going to overeat. So if I'm giving my body what it wants and what it needs, all throughout the day, every day, at Christmas time, I don't have to overeat. I can have the foods that I enjoy and then be done with it. Mm-hmm. And I don't have to feel guilty because, one, we shouldn't feel guilty over the foods that we eat, but also knowing that, like you said, our bodies are going to even out, and so I don't have to worry about it. But yeah, that mentality of restriction is huge because it's going to cause us to overeat, every time. And then really the goal of this is making our bodies feel good. And so I don't want to overeat, not because I'm worried about what it's going to do to my body, but because I know that I'm not going to feel good, and I'm not going to feel energized, and I'm not going to want to go for a run or do something active outside with my family. And so the purpose is I want to feel good. And so that's why I don't want to overeat.
Mm-hmm. Thank you for pointing that out. So Kelsey was asking earlier about, should you eat 3 meals and some snacks? So just to clarify, you're saying just be mindful, like eat when you're hungry, stop when you're full. So if it's not lunchtime and you're hungry, have a mid-morning snack, right? Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, I am. So there are a lot of food rules associated with the timing of meals. And what I say to people is, everybody's body is different, and what works for you isn't necessarily going to work for other people. I require 3 meals and 2 to 3 snacks. Other people like to do 6 small meals. And I think it's really what works for you with how your body feels, but also your schedule. If you don't have time to eat 6 meals, then don't do it. It's just not feasible for some people, and to make people feel guilty for the fact that they can't make 6 small meals, that it doesn't need to be that way. So learning to figure out what makes me feel best. Now, from a nutrition perspective, I know that our body needs fuel around every 4 hours. It's not a perfect rule. Sometimes I get hungry in 3, sometimes I get hungry in 5, but it's around that 4-hour window. So I encourage people to check in every 3 to 4 hours, just because we get really, really busy, and sometimes we don't recognize that we're hungry. And so checking in at first, it sometimes just has to be a really conscious decision. And so we check in and we ask ourselves, okay, am I hungry right now? Do I physically feel hungry? Do I notice that I'm getting shaky or irritable or a headache? Because that's a way of my body signaling that I need food. And then if I am, I'm going to eat. If I'm not hungry, then I may wait 30 minutes. May wait an hour, because it's not very fun to eat when you're not hungry. Food tastes a lot better when you're hungry. I heard the expression, hunger is the best best sauce. That's what it is. Hunger is the best sauce.
Oh, that's good.
So, being able to eat when I'm slightly hungry and being able to stop when I'm moderately full then allows me to eat again in a few hours and enjoy it. But it gives my body the fuel that it needs, because our brains need fuel constantly. And so being able to feed it when our bodies tell us to is important. As we listen to our body and we honor it, then it's going to trust us, and we don't end up feeling crazy around food. We don't have to worry about, am I going to get food or not? Because we're constantly giving it the fuel when it needs it. So I hope that answers the question.
Yeah, that's good. And I have found, watching my boys, kids are intrinsically good at this if we let them be. There are days when they come home from school and they are ravenous. Like, I can't fill them up fast enough. And then there are other days when they don't want an afternoon snack at all. Or like at dinner time, they can leave like homemade macaroni and cheese on their plate and not eat it all. And I'm like, what? But they know their bodies. They know when they're hungry and they know when they're full. And so I'm really trying hard to not make food rules for them, as far as, how much to eat and when to eat. And, I try and offer them healthy choices, but again, trying not to just only, I never want forbidden foods for them, so that they don't go crazy. It's a hard balance as a mama, but I think that, they're super smart about listening to their bodies and being intuitive. So
I'm really grateful that you're fostering that, because as parents, we want what's best for our children, and so we try to control their intake, and it actually backfires. And so I'm grateful that you're trying to teach them. Well, you're not trying to teach them to be intuitive eaters. You're trying to keep them to be intuitive eaters. We're all born as intuitive eaters, but we've just, because of life and the way that we're raised and that sort of thing, we've really gotten cut off from that. And really the dieting mentality that just really has gotten into all of our minds has really broken that intuitive relationship with our body. But yeah, I think feeding it when it's hungry is really important, so that we can stop when we're full. If we get overly hungry, kind of like when we restrict, we binge. When we get overly hungry, we're going to get overly full. It's just kind of that pendulum swing. We go from one extreme to the other, and we don't want to do that, because it doesn't feel good, and it feels chaotic when we're eating and that sort of thing. So we want to avoid it by feeding our body regularly and checking in. And you said some days your boys need a snack and some days they don't. And it's the same way with us. That's why I don't like meal plans because there are days, or counting calories or whatever, there are days that you need more food than you normally do. And then there are days that we need less. And I don't want to underfeed my body, and I don't want to overfeed my body. And so being able to listen to those fluctuations from day to day and meal to meal. Sometimes I will eat my entire bowl of oatmeal, and then the next day I don't need it all. And so being able to honor that and listen and say, okay, I need to eat all of this, or no, I don't. And
That's good. And speaking about that, Kelsey had asked earlier, do you have some recommendations for, snacks that you can have on hand at all times, like quick, easy? I think that's what you were asking, right, Kelsey? Having on hand at all times. Let's see if she had asked that earlier.
Yeah. What I do for snacks, I normally every week make a snack for my husband and I. So I kind of have a rotation of different snack bars that I'll make. So one week I'll make Lara bars, and the next week I'll make my Trek bars, or I'll have baked oatmeal or something like that. I love oats as a snack. It's kind of weird. Or an iced latte or something like that. So I kind of have every week I will prepare some sort of snack for the week, or maybe banana bread muffins or something like that. And then I have those on hand to have. I also love yogurt and fruit, or I'm trying to think of what I eat. Iced lattes right now are a really big thing for me. I have those quite often.
You have some coffee lovers in this
Oh
group.
my gosh, I love coffee. It's a little bit out of control. Way too expensive. But really, that is just going to depend on you. What you like, what makes you feel good. I thrive more on more of a carbohydrate diet. Those are more satisfying to me. Things like oats and things like that are just more satisfying to me. But other people have just different tastes. They have different needs. And so learning what is really satisfying to you. Also being mindful of, okay, I'm hungry, and I don't want to get overly hungry, but I also don't want to be too full. And so being conscientious of how much do I really need? If I eat all of this, am I going to not be hungry for dinner? So that kind of plays into what you eat as well. I'm trying to think of snacks on hand. I don't know why I can't think of what I eat, but a lot of it is what makes you feel good, what satisfies you. Do you want to feel heavy? Do you want to feel more light? And that's going to kind of dictate what you eat. But I'm a huge fan of eating fresh foods when you can. I don't know. I don't think that there's anything wrong with eating processed foods in our culture. It's really necessary, but I love getting more whole foods whenever we can, because not because of anything to do with our weight, but just because it's going to make you feel better.
That's
for the most part.
One thing I would love for you to touch on, you mentioned earlier about this is really countercultural, what we're talking about, right? Because we live in such a diet culture today. And I mean, we're health coaches, so I mean, we're entrenched in it. And so we share a passion in trying to help women view their health as not a way to approach it as a diet, but as a lifestyle. And so, for people who are talking with friends or family members, we had some girls, at Thanksgiving have family members who, can maybe sabotage or not understand our journey. Like, do you have any tips for that, for the girls, for how to deal with being countercultural?
Yeah, I mean, it's really, really hard because I'm so passionate about this. Sometimes conversations like that make me really angry, and I have to be gracious in the sense that I am fortunate to have learned something that they haven't yet. And so I have to be kind and gracious. Sometimes I just have to leave the conversation. Sometimes I just keep my mouth shut. But I think that if someone is really struggling with disordered eating or an eating disorder, that there may need to be a conversation with family members of, this is something that I'm really trying to get under control. This is something I'm addressing. I would appreciate it if you wouldn't talk about weight, or if you wouldn't talk about good or bad foods, just because right now this is something that's really triggering for me. So I think if it's a really big issue, being able to draw those boundaries and say, this is something that I need your help with, and I would appreciate it if you wouldn't do that. Or when people comment on your weight, maybe saying thank you, I feel really good, or if they comment on your weight in a negative way, just saying, I'm taking care of my body and I feel great. I don't know. It's hard because I am trying to change the conversations, but I don't want to do it in a way that is like getting onto people or something like that. It's really hard. But I think it just starts with on our own, how we don't bring up conversations about diets or our weight, or how good or bad something is. And then, like I said, I think a lot of times just refraining from those conversations.
Yeah, thank you for addressing that.
Yeah.
For the girls who are with us, Emily and Kelsey, do you have any other questions that you want to ask Ashley while she's here with us live? I so appreciate how you are changing the conversation. Your heart is so aligned with our mission. Like, totally, Emily, right? Like, I knew when I found this girl that she was so aligned with our mission, so aligned with our mission. And I just really appreciate hearing somebody else say, whoops, I'm so sorry.
I know how often food and exercise run the show. And, God says that physical training is of some value. So it is important for us to take care of our bodies. But ultimately, our bodies are, they're not forever. They're not eternal. We're going to die and they're going to return to dust. But what's really important is what we're doing for the kingdom. And so when thoughts of food and exercise control our life and keep us from being able to love people well or serve well, that's when there's a problem. So I think it's important for us to take care of ourselves. But when it's elevated to a place that it shouldn't be, that's when there's a problem. And so I really want to help people to have the right approach to food, where food is food. It's a good gift from God. It's something that I enjoy, but I don't use it as a way to I don't know, soothe my emotions or change my emotions or be my friend. You know what I mean? There are things that food is not designed to do. And so I want to help people use it in the way that God has intended, and for us to view our bodies the way that God has intended. Our bodies house who we are, but we are not our bodies, and our worth and our value is not determined by that, or how many calories we eat or how many calories we burn. Our identity is deeply rooted in who we are in Christ as an adopted daughter, not as someone that burned 600 calories and ate kale all day,
Right. Oh my goodness. Yes, girl. Yes. Okay. So here's another question. Where do you start when someone struggles with not being able to actually break out of that diet mindset?
Yeah. I think that for some people, they're able to read intuitive eating and really get into it. And then I think that there are times that we just need help. So I think it's important to find an intuitive eating dietitian, not just any dietitian, because unfortunately there are a lot of dietitians that still promote the weight loss, the diets, that sort of thing. So I think finding someone that knows the intuitive eating process to provide the tools that can help. I'm able to help my clients by walking them through this process. I'm able to talk through things. I'm able to give them assignments. I'm able to explain the science behind why diets don't work. And sometimes we just need a little bit of encouragement. We need someone to be speaking truth to us when we are getting all of these lies. We need someone that can remind us of the truth so that we can base our life on the truth rather than the lie.
Yeah. So
I would encourage finding someone that is more entrenched in the intuitive eating, their journey, or finding an intuitive eating dietitian.
And I think Emily's asking your first step. I think you said read the book Intuitive Eating it's Evelyn Tribole.
And Elise Resch. I also think it's really helpful to listen to podcasts, things like I listen to Food Psych and what is that called? Dietitians Unplugged. There's a lot of different podcasts out there. I think that it's hard because a lot of the resources out there are not from a biblical perspective. And so I'm always having to ask God, like, how do you view this? Because I want to be able to incorporate really practical, helpful tools, but also be able to see it from the spiritual side as well, and see things from God's perspective. I feel like a lot in the anti-diet, it's all about like, love yourself and you're so great. And I don't think it's about loving ourselves more. It's about seeing who we are in Christ, because you're just going to spin your wheels and get nowhere until it's rooted in the gospel and rooted in my identity in Christ.
Well, Ashley, thank you so much for saying that. That's so good. Kelsey asked, this is just a silly question, but she said, what is your favorite donut? Your favorite donut?
Apple fritters. For sure, apple fritters. They're the biggest ones, too. And I also love I think they're crullers. They kind of look like those massive, I don't know why I think they look like tires, but you know what I'm talking about? Like the monster truck tires where the sides, I don't even know how to explain it.
Yeah, I know what you mean.
They're like an old-fashioned donut. I love both of those. Really, I just love donuts in general. And to be honest, I don't eat donuts that often. I love them, but I don't like the way that they make me feel. And so I wish I had them more often. But it's one of those things where I no longer feel restricted, and so I don't feel the compulsion to eat donuts, but they are a part of my diet, and I eat them occasionally and I enjoy them, but I also pair them with some eggs to make me feel better. But yeah, I love those. I also love frozen yogurt or ice cream of any kind. That's another favorite of mine. And then coffee.
Oh, mercy. Emily's on here, and coffee and ice cream is something that the two of us share a love for. But something that you just said, and I know we need to quickly end this soon, but you just said about adding something to the donut. And I heard a podcast actually by Elise Resch, who is the author, and she said for her birthday, she had cake for breakfast, okay? And she's a registered dietitian and intuitive eating, specialist. And she had birthday cake for breakfast, but she had a banana with peanut butter. She added to it rather than not eating lunch. She just added a little something nutritious to the cake so that it balanced it out. And I was like, oh my word, like that is so countercultural, right? Like, first of all, if I ate cake for breakfast, I would feel guilty or something. But her whole thing was, it's your birthday, and throw in some protein and some peanut butter and a banana, and it balances itself out. Don't take away.
I listened to that podcast yesterday as well. So that's funny. Yeah. And I mean, it was a satisfying meal. It's something that she really wanted. And so she ate it and she enjoyed it and was satisfied. And then she was able to throw the rest of the cake away, because she had her fix. But yeah.
Yeah, I thought that was great. And she said, the other piece wasn't even very tasty, so she didn't even eat it, So, I thought that's so countercultural, but I loved that too. So I can't thank you enough. How can the girls who are watching, if they want to learn more about you, what's the best way for them to connect with you?
Yeah, they can go to my blog. It's donuteatingdietitian.com. The last post I had was my tips for eating on the holidays, and then also a link to the podcast that I was in. I'm hoping to post another blog soon. If you're looking for a really good recipe, look up probably my pancakes and my sweet potato quesadillas. Those are like two things that I'm famous for with my friends. So they can find me on my blog, or they can find me on Instagram at the Donut Eating Dietitian as well.
Okay. Let me ask you this too. I think I saw on your Instagram account, do you make your own bread?
I do. Yeah, occasionally. Mm-hmm.
Can you?
I don't make like sandwich bread, but I do make bread occasionally. I made it had a lot of seeds in it. It was more of like a nut based. I love hearty breads, and so that was delicious with avocado and toast. And then sometimes I'll make like a honey wheat oatmeal bread for the mornings as well. But I don't always make bread. But I enjoy making things from scratch. Yeah.
Well, if you wouldn't mind maybe sharing that recipe, maybe emailing it to me so I can share it with our girls. Did you just bake it in the oven?
Yeah, I didn't come up with the recipe. I just found it.
Okay.
You like toast the nuts and seeds, and then you combine it with oats and flaxseed and water and something called psyllium husk. And a lot of those are like really high in fiber, so they just soak up the water and almost make a gel.
Mm-hmm.
And you put it in the fridge for like an hour, and then you bake it and let it cool down and slice it. And so it's not like a light, airy bread. It's very dense, but it makes a really great toast with avocado on it.
Okay,
so.
that sounds divine. If you wouldn't mind sharing that recipe, that would be fantastic.
Yes.
All right. I appreciate you so much. And for those of you who could be with us live, this has just been a delight. So thank you so much, Ashley, for being with us.
Thank you. I appreciate it. And I hope that I was an encouragement today, and I'm excited for all of the women that are on this journey and that they're seeing a new perspective. I'm really excited for them.
Thank you, friend. All right. Y'all have a great day. Thanks.
Bye.